You are listening to The Vocal Technologist. Spoken Tech for your ears.
For the last 10 years or so, navigating our digital lives has felt a bit like walking through a highly modernized, incredibly clean hospital. I mean, everything's flat, it's sterile, and just totally minimalist.
Yeah, very safe, very clinical.
Right. You tap a perfectly flat white square on your glass screen, and a perfectly flat gray menu just slides out. There's no texture, there's no mess, just, maximum efficiency.
It has been a highly efficient era, honestly, and very predictable. But if we are being completely honest, it's pretty devoid of friction or
Yeah.
like life. The tech industry basically categorized our entire digital existence into these neat, frictionless little boxes.
But if you look at a massive stack of recent tech, design, and developer newsletters, which is exactly what we're doing today for all of you who love to learn and just the crucial insights, you realize those sterile hospital walls are currently melting.
Oh, totally melting. It's a massive shift.
We are seeing a complete upheaval of the digital world. I mean, we were talking about glossy, pulsating buttons coming back, developers dictating complex software architectures just by talking out loud, and this wild paradox where AI systems are trying to replicate human taste while we are desperately trying to prove that we are still human.
It is a huge, totally invisible shift happening right under our noses. We are abandoning the era of manual flat computing, and what is replacing it is incredibly messy, it's deeply psychological, and undeniably powerful. We are basically moving into the intent-driven future.
Exactly. And our mission today is to understand exactly how that shift is happening and what it actually means for you. We are going through everything from early 2000s video game nostalgia all the way down to the raw, unfiltered psychology of what actually makes a human being tap a button on a piece of glass.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the surface level.
The fun stuff.
Yeah, exactly. What we actually look at on our screens is drastically changing right now. It is. The visual language of the internet is being rewritten as we speak. I mean, the era of flat design is over.
Just look at Microsoft. They recently unveiled a new logo for Xbox. And it is this glossy, translucent, highly textured throwback to the early 2000s. It literally looks like liquid candy.
It really does. It has that wild reflective depth to it.
And Google is doing the exact same thing. The Gemini app is getting a total user interface overhaul. They are bringing in a pulsating, colorful gradient background, pill-shaped prompt boxes, and on Apple devices, they are leaning heavily into that same liquid glass-like aesthetic. The flat minimalism is just vanishing.
There was a fantastic piece in Wallpaper magazine that perfectly diagnosed what happened to us over the last decade and, why it is suddenly ending. They called it the optimization aesthetic.
The optimization aesthetic. Okay, break that down for me.
So the argument is that our entire visual culture was hijacked by industrial optimization and platforms like Instagram.
Wait, how does Instagram force a whole industry to make things flat?
Well, because of the mechanical constraints of a mobile feed. If you are a designer and your work has to look good as a tiny thumbnail-sized square on a phone screen, you simply cannot use subtle drop shadows or realistic textures.
Oh, because it just looks like a blurry mess on a tiny screen.
Exactly. They turn into muddy pixels. To survive on the feed, your design had to be loud, flat, and highly contrasting. The pursuit of extreme efficiency completely transformed how artists created work. The aesthetic of the internet basically prioritized scalability and fast loading times over any kind of, emotional resonance.
Wow, so it basically colonized our everyday life.
Yeah.
Everything became a flat metric. But here is my pushback on this recent shift, right? Are we genuinely moving toward better design, or is this just the digital equivalent of wearing flared jeans again because everyone got bored at skinny jeans? Is a liquid glass Xbox logo just pure nostalgia?
What's fascinating here is that this return to texture isn't just a nostalgic fashion trend. It is an active rebellion. Designers are using something called skeuomorphism.
Okay, give me the 5-year-old's translation of that. Skeuomorphism.
Right, so skeuomorphism is when a digital interface mimics a real-world physical object. Think of the early iPhone days when the digital calendar app had fake leather stitching around the edges.
Oh, man, I remember that.
Yeah.
Or the digital compass that looked like a real brass compass.
Yes, exactly. By bringing back depth, gloss, and physical texture, designers are actively pushing back against an era where efficiency erased personality. When an interface is completely flat and optimized for a thumbnail, it basically treats the user like a metric.
Yeah.
But a textured, skeuomorphic design treats the interface as an environment you experience, rather than just a transaction you complete.
That reframes it entirely.
Mhm.
The digital environment is changing because the underlying physics of that environment are changing, which I think brings us to the hidden engine beneath all of this. Because it's one thing to change a logo to look like a shiny water drop, but the real reason these interfaces are evolving so fast is because the actual way they are built is completely different now.
Absolutely. The foundation is shifting.
We are no longer clicking buttons to command software. We are expressing intent.
And this is the crucial pivot of the entire tech industry right now. The newsletters we read explicitly warn developers not to just take their old apps and, bolt on AI. To survive, you have to rethink the interaction from the ground up. We are shifting away from command-based computing into intent-based interaction.
Let's use a restaurant analogy to break that down. If I go to a restaurant, command-based computing is me walking into the kitchen and telling the chef, turn the stove to 400 degrees, take out a knife, chop the onion into quarter-inch cubes and put it in the pan for 2 minutes. I have to know all the steps.
Right, you're micromanaging the machine.
Exactly. But intent-based computing is me sitting at the table and just saying, I'd like the French onion soup. The chef, or in this case, the software, abstracts all the internal complexity to make it happen.
That is the perfect analogy. And we are seeing the digital kitchen completely reorganize itself around that exact concept. Just look at Figma Make's new voice-to-text feature.
And Figma is the main tool designers use to build interfaces, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the industry standard. But you aren't dragging and dropping rectangles to build a website anymore. You are sitting at the table and dictating prompts directly into a chat. The system auto-cleans your text, it tracks the version history, and even uses Zapier connectors.
Just to clarify for everyone, Zapier is basically a digital pipe that connects different apps together, right?
Exactly. It pulls data from over 9,000 other applications. So you just speak your intent, the pipes pull in the data, and the design literally builds itself. But it goes much deeper than just an initial mockup. Figma recently introduced an MCP server.
Okay, MCP server. That sounds incredibly dense.
I know, it sounds like an IT nightmare.
Yeah.
MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, but honestly, you can just think of it as a universal translator that plugs directly into the brain of a company's code base.
Okay.
Historically, a design file was just a static picture, just a drawing. But with an MCP server, AI agents can actually read the live code a developer is writing and then write editable design frames directly onto the designer's canvas.
Wait, really? So the design file and the actual software code are talking to each other in real time?
Yes. It creates a living connection. And this completely kills the traditional handoff. For decades, the process was a designer finishing a static file and essentially throwing it over a brick wall to a developer.
And then the developer had to, rebuild it from scratch in code?
Precisely. It was so inefficient. But there is a new app mentioned in our sources literally called Intent, and it replaces that handoff with a shared workspace. The designer, the developer, and the AI all collaborate on the same surface at the exact same time.
I hear that, and part of me is amazed, but honestly, part of me feels a profound existential crisis on behalf of designers.
Oh, you're not the only one?
I mean, if I am just dictating my design intent to an AI, and that AI is talking to the code through an MCP server and generating the frames, doesn't that make me less of an artist and more of a manager talking to a very fast, very literal intern?
You are hitting on the exact anxiety sweeping through the industry right now. This shift shatters the traditional design bottleneck. You don't need to spend 40 hours pushing pixels manually anymore. But, as one of the sources points out, this is leading to massive designer exhaustion.
Oh, because they have to constantly manage the machines.
Yeah, the pressure to constantly learn how to manage these new, rapidly evolving AI interns is overwhelming.
Because the tool you learn on Monday might be completely obsolete by Friday.
Exactly. But the crucial reminder here for anyone listening, whether you are a designer, a marketer, or an engineer, is that your real value was never in knowing the specific tool. The manual execution of pushing pixels was not your true worth. Your value is your strategic thinking, your curiosity, and your ability to abstract higher-level problems.
Which perfectly sets up the next massive hurdle. Because if the AI is the intern doing all this automated, intent-driven execution at lightning speed, how do we prevent the AI from churning out totally tasteless, generic garbage? I mean, if I just order the soup, how do I make sure the AI chef doesn't make it taste like dishwater?
Right. This brings us to the crisis of authenticity. Emil Kowalski wrote a brilliant piece about the need for agents with taste.
Agents with taste.
Yeah, because AI coding agents are incredible at the engineering side, but they really struggle with visual details. They don't natively understand motion or typography or the overall feel of a brand. So developers are actively creating structured skill files.
Wait, how do you mathematically code human taste into a file?
You basically have to make the implicit explicit. Designers are using something called a component.md file.
What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, a markdown file, that .md extension, is basically just a plain, bare-bones text document, but developers are using it as a strict instruction manual for the AI. You don't just tell the AI to make button pop.
Right, because the AI doesn't know what pop means.
Exactly. So the markdown file explicitly encodes the mathematical easing curves for an animation, the exact millisecond duration of a transition, and strict rules about accessibility and contrast. It documents the human reasoning behind the aesthetic. That way, the AI agent never has to guess at the nuance. It simply executes the taste that a human already defined.
It is basically putting up massive guardrails so the machine doesn't derail the brand. Because without those guardrails, things go very wrong, very publicly. We just saw a wild clash regarding this. Casey Green, the artist who drew the incredibly famous This Is Fine comic.
Yeah, the one with the dog sitting at a table in a burning room.
Yes, that one. So he publicly denounced an AI startup called Artisan.
That story really highlights the friction of this moment we're in.
It really does. Because Artisan allegedly altered his comic for a Subway ad to promote their AI sales tool. They changed the caption from "This is fine" to "My pipeline is on fire." Green was furious, and he publicly stated he was seeking legal representation over the unauthorized use of his work.
And you just have these startups moving so aggressively to automate marketing while human creators are fiercely defending the context and ownership of their art. The line between inspiration and algorithmic theft is getting very blurry.
And it's not just visual art. Spotify is actively rolling out verified by Spotify badges. They are handing out these little green check marks to over 99% of actively searched artists on their platform.
And the reason is wild.
Right. The sole reason is to help users distinguish real, authentic human artists from AI-generated music impersonators. Here's where it gets really interesting. We are literally spending thousands of hours writing complex markdown files to teach machines how to mimic human taste, while simultaneously begging massive tech platforms to give us a green badge to prove we aren't machines. The irony is just staggering.
It is a profound paradox. We are digitizing our humanity while demanding analog proof of our existence. I mean, take a look at your own playlist later today and ask yourself how many of those ambient focus tracks were actually composed by an algorithm.
Oh man, probably half of them.
Easily. So, if AI is taking over the technical execution, and we are successfully encoding our aesthetic taste into files for it to mimic, what is the remaining frontier for the human?
Based on the stack of newsletters we read, the consensus is pretty clear. The only remaining frontier is deeply, genuinely understanding other humans. If the software builds itself based on user intent, your only job is to understand the raw human psychology behind that intent.
And our sources provided some fascinating frameworks for how to do that. Hannah Shamji's work on the 4 levels of customer understanding is a great baseline. She argues that traditional surveys are practically useless.
Because what people say on a survey, what they actually think, and what they ultimately do rarely align.
Exactly. People are terrible at predicting their own behavior. To build genuine products, you must observe actual behavior, which leads into one of the most interesting concepts we came across, Jacob Nielsen's deprivation studies.
Oh, I love this one. Break down how a deprivation study actually works.
So instead of a standard usability test where you sit someone in a lab and ask them to click through a prototype, you intentionally take a product or a feature away from the user for a defined period of time. You totally disrupt their ingrained behavior to see what they truly need.
So you just break their workflow on purpose.
Yes. When the tool is gone, you observe the wild workarounds they invent to solve their problem. That struggle exposes the true utility of the product.
A deprivation study is brilliant. It's like hiding your friend's smartphone for a weekend to see what they actually use it for. Did they miss scrolling through Instagram, or did they just desperately need the Maps app to figure out how to get home? It strips away all the superficial opinions about liquid glass icons and forces absolute truth.
And that deep psychological truth translates directly into massive business impact. Just look at Pinterest. They just reported their first $1 billion quarter.
$1 billion is huge, but how do they actually do it? Social media is notoriously hard to monetize right now.
Well, their growth wasn't driven by superficial engagement, like people mindlessly liking posts. It was driven by 80 billion monthly visual searches. The mechanism here is key.
Okay, what do you mean by the mechanism?
When you type cool lamp into a text search, you might be researching the history of lamps or writing a school paper. But when you take your phone and snap a photo of a specific brass lamp sitting on a table in a cafe that represents commercial intent, you want that exact lamp.
All right.
Pinterest realized that visual search is pure intent data, and they mapped their advertisers directly to that psychology.
Wow, and Uber saw something incredibly similar. They increased their ride conversions by 14.5%. That is a massive jump for a mature app. And they didn't do it by changing the color of the Bic Ride button. They tackled the core psychological barrier of transportation, which is uncertainty.
Yeah, the anxiety.
Right. The anxiety of taking Uber isn't about the interface. It's the mental friction of wondering, where is the car? How much will this spike in price? Are they going to cancel on me?
Uber attacked the anxiety, not the pixels. They implemented auto pickup detection, real-time live driver tracking, and guaranteed upfront pricing. They took the psychological friction in the user's mind and built the software directly around eliminating it.
Which naturally brings us to the psychology of nudges. Designers use these microsignals all the time. A default setting that is already checked for you, a bright red color hierarchy on a specific button, or like a progress bar that makes you feel like you need to finish setting up your profile. These tiny visual cues silently shape user behavior.
They have an outsized psychological impact, but this raises an important question. When you have access to this much intent data and you understand the psychology of your user this deeply, where is the ethical line?
That's a great question.
Nudges are powerful tools, but they cross into manipulation when they remove informed consent or when they are designed to exploit a user's psychological blind spots purely for corporate profit. The design industry is really having to reckon with the fact that understanding psychology is a double-edged sword.
It is an incredible amount of power. I mean, we are talking about software that knows what you want before you do, built by AI agents that can read your intent and write the code at the speed of thought.
It's basically science fiction.
It really is. But here is the ultimate catch. We have spent this entire time talking about digital friction and human psychology. But all of this brilliant, frictionless software eventually hits a wall. It has to live inside a physical object. It has to exist in your pocket or on your wrist or in the dashboard of your car. And right now, hardware is having a really hard time keeping up with the software revolution.
The physical world is entirely unforgiving. You can iterate an AI prompt infinitely, but you cannot iterate a physical piece of glass or a metal hinge at the speed of thought.
We saw proof of that physical struggle recently. Unbox Therapy leaked a hands-on video of a dummy unit for the rumored foldable iPhone Ultra. It is this passport-style design that folds open into a tablet. And watching the video, you see them meticulously testing the real-world physical friction.
Because it have to actually feel good in your hand.
Exactly. They are testing the ergonomics, the thickness, how far a human thumb physically has to stretch to reach the volume button, and even how it sits flat on a table. Because if you get the physical hinge wrong, you cannot fix it with an over-the-air software update.
It is bound by atoms, not code. Apple is also reportedly looking at a major redesign for the 2027 iPhone Pro, pushing toward quad-curved displays and under-display cameras. But pushing those physical manufacturing boundaries takes years of trial and error.
And sometimes the physical constraints aren't just about manufacturing. They are about legacy systems. Look at the CarPlay Ultra struggle. Apple promised this massive revolutionary rollout that would take over the entire integrated dashboard of your car. They wanted to replace the clunky car software with their seamless, intent-driven ecosystem.
But reality hit hard. Major partners like Mercedes-Benz and Audi have backed out of the integration. Other manufacturers are just showing lukewarm interest.
Because Apple can design the perfect intent-based interface in an afternoon using Figma AI. But they still have to negotiate with a 100-year-old German car manufacturer to actually get it wired into a physical dashboard. The intent of the software hits a literal brick wall when it meets the reality of legacy automotive supply chains.
It perfectly illustrates the tension of this moment in tech. The software is living in the future, and the hardware is still fighting the constraints of the present.
So what does this all mean? We have been on quite a journey today through this stack of newsletters. We started by looking at the surface, the melting hospital walls, as we abandoned flat minimalism for the nostalgia and texture of liquid glass. We dove into the invisible engine, exploring how MCP servers and AI agents are turning our spoken intent directly into living code. We navigated the authenticity crisis, where artists are fighting algorithmic theft and we are using plaintext markdown files to encode human taste. And finally, we explored the raw human truth of deprivation studies and the ultimate friction of trying to force infinite software into the physical constraints of foldable phones and car dashboards.
If you're listening to this, the core takeaway from all these sources is actually a message of profound reassurance. Do not let your ego get in the way of this transition, and absolutely do not feel like you are somehow behind on AI.
Nobody has it fully figured out.
Exactly. Every single expert, designer, and developer is still figuring this out in real time. The true value you bring to the table isn't knowing how to operate every single new automated tool that launches this week. The tools are just the interns. Your value is your curiosity. It is your critical thinking. It is your deeply human ability to understand the psychology of other humans and your resilience in adapting to a completely new digital environment.
The manual execution is gone, but you are still the strategist sitting at the table ordering the soup.
But I do want to leave you with one final thought. Something to chew on that wasn't explicitly answered in any of the research we pulled today, but feels like the inevitable conclusion of everything we've discussed. If we are rapidly moving toward a world where we use AI to perfectly predict human psychology and commercial intent, and we also use AI agents to instantly design and code the software solutions for that intent, how long until an AI designer intends to build something exclusively for an AI consumer, completely bypassing the human experience altogether?
Wow. An economy of machines selling optimized intent to other machines. That is a heavy one to think about, but that is exactly why we do this. We love unpacking these massive shifts with you. Keep digging deep, keep asking those big questions, and remember that even as the sterile, flat digital walls melt around us, the messy psychological human reality underneath is where the real magic happens. Thanks for joining us, and we will catch you on the next Deep Dive.
Spoken Tech, for your ears.